Hey, what's going on? Well, you guys probably didn't see a lot of me on video because I wasn't the video person. That was Joe's job. But I got to start somewhere because the story is going to be told. Today, I'm kind of moving backwards. So today, I'm just going to start with, as it's fresh in my mind anyway, what happened toward the end. As you know, Joe went into home hospice. I believe it was January 5th or January 6th of this year. The reason he went to hospice was because 7 new brain tumors appeared, and you know, we all know he had the 2 brain surgeries last year in January and March, and then in August he also had targeted radiation because, again, that magic number 7, he had 7 brain tumors. So at this particular point in time, they said the only option would have been whole brain radiation, and they said that quality of life was more important. Um, Pretty much what would have happened, he would have been losing all his functionalities and reverting back probably to how he was when he had the 2nd brain surgery, and that was before he went to rehab. So what kind of life is that? um, Knowing his history, how the brain tumors kept reappearing and reappearing, to me, it was the best decision. It was hard to accept, harder for him to accept, knowing how he is and how he liked to fight and everything he had gone through. Um, it was a really hard pill to swallow. So um, he came home on hospice, which was his wish, and of course, I wouldn't have it any other way. Um, it wasn't an easy ordeal in any sense of the word. uh, Harder because, as you know, he took a fall on Thanksgiving evening outside of the complex because the sidewalk was broken, and he landed on his right side, which was his weaker side, and kind of reverted back, and with the weaknesses and all that stuff. um, you know he did so well with the rehab, as you guys all know, and it was sad to see all that work pretty much down the drain because of one fall. And that's what was the major challenge when he was home, because his edema got so bad, he kept falling. He fell a couple more times after that original fall, and it just progressively got worse to the point where the strength was next to none. So he he was a pretty big boy at this point because he gained all this weight, like 50 to 60 pounds, from all the steroids for the past year and a half. So, I mean, that's difficult for me, or even the average person, to lift and hold up and do all that stuff. So that caused a challenge. And you know something, not only the challenge, it was pretty heartbreaking because he was doing so well, like the first month, 4 to 5 weeks being home on hospice, that if he was more mobile, he would have been walking around and using the facilities and using the shower himself, and like he was before, and cooking and doing the things that he loved. I would have been able to take him out. I would have been able to do so much more. But it was difficult. I mean, granted, we got to take him out a few times, but we needed manpower, and they had to lift him up in a wheelchair. It wasn't, you know, these things just, I wish that part was different. I wish it all was different, but I wish that part was different too. But anyway, so like I said, it was about the 5th or 6th of January. Um, he was going back and forth with it. I want to do whole brain radiation. I can handle it. And, I explained to him, I said, look, you've been seeing your doctors at Sloan Kettering for quite some time. They've established relationships with you. And, if it was any Joe Schmo off the street, they probably would have been like, okay, whatever, we'll do whole brain radiation, and not giving a damn about your quality of life. And I said, well, these doctors care about your quality of life. I mean, they've seen how hard you fought, and they want you to enjoy as much time as you can and live your life. Um, it, I know they're just words, right? Not easy words either, because who wants to accept that? Especially somebody like Joe. I mean, let's face it, again, he's fought so hard. He's gone through so much. I did, however, reach out to MD Anderson in Houston to see if they had any trials. Hey, you know what? It's worth a shot. The problem with that was they expected, or they wanted, I should say, him to go down there for 5 to 7 days to get retested for pretty much everything before they determined whether he'd be eligible for any trials. I thought that they would have been able to just cross-reference all his scans and his reports and stuff like that to see if there was anything he'd be eligible for. Being Joe was in the position he was with the mobility and stuff like that, not being able to fly, wouldn't be able to really sit comfortably in a car for so long. It pretty much, it was an option, but it wasn't, if that makes sense. Because let's say, for instance, we did get him down there. And I know that we would have probably been able to get him down there one way or another. They put him through all that. And then they turn around and say, oh, we don't have any studies. We don't have any trials for you. That's almost 2 weeks wasted of time that you can be enjoying your life. To have to go back to all the stuff that you've been going through for the past 2.5 years, testing and all this other stuff, just to be told no. So we decided against it. And it was a good decision, I mean, let's face it, we wanted him here. There's so many things that could have gone wrong. Not only the wasted time for them to say no, but, just being put through all of that for it not to work and not being home where you needed and wanted to be. It was tough. It was really messed up because you want more options, but they're just not there. And that's the ugly part about cancer, as a lot of you already know. And so he was home. He was doing pretty well. We didn't get a hospital bed at first because I think it was more of a mindset. He always loved the couch anyway, propping himself up at the couch, doing pretty good, using the commode, getting up, for the most part in the beginning. January 12th was our 5th year anniversary, wedding anniversary. And we were able to get him out to the beach the Sunday before. A bunch of us got together, of course, manpower with the wheelchair and stuff. So Joe always loved the beach. He wanted to go to the beach. We got him to the beach. It was a nice afternoon, a little rainy. Had a great brunch, came here, hung out. He had his first beer in over 25 years. I know some people may say, oh, well, he was in the program. Yeah, he was in the program. But for some reason, that was something that he always said he was going to do. He was going to have a beer. And you know what? You could do pretty much whatever you want at this point. Okay? That's the way I see it. And I hope more people see stuff like that, as long as it's not really hurting them or somebody else. And it was a very enjoyable day. And, we celebrated our 5th anniversary following days, that Wednesday, the 12th. And the very next day, the 13th, that Thursday was his 55th birthday. So, with a couple good friends, we coordinated a, if you will, a drive-by, birthday drive-by. You know, like during COVID, everybody was pretty much like doing the caravans and stuff like that because, you know, social distancing and all that. Well, we did. And he was very antsy that day. My sister was here, and my brother-in-law and nephew too. They drove up from Tennessee, and very antsy because you tell Joe you have a surprise. It doesn't sit well with him because he wants to know what it is, right? Very, 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 antsy. Oh, what's all the secrets? What's all this? What's all that? So we managed to get him out into the balcony in the wheelchair and, moved him over to the chair as comfortably as possible. And he was still very antsy. And anyway, here comes the caravan. Oh my God, it's great. I know a lot of you saw the video. I'm going to repost it. He was so happy. You can hear him in the background. Oh my God. Oh my God. It was just great. It was during the week, early at 5 o'clock. I know a lot of people couldn't come because of work or whatever, but we really wanted to do it the day of his birthday. So, but it was a nice turnout considering, and he was so happy and so excited, and we have great pictures, great videos and stuff like that. And I thank everybody who came because he was so happy. One of my favorite pictures, there's two actually from that day. They're all my favorite, but there's two that stand out. Was one when he was waiting patiently on the balcony and he has this big smile on his face. And then the other one was after the majority of the people left and a handful of us came in and we had a birthday cake for him. And he, again, this big cheesy smile with his birthday hat and his birthday cake. I love it. Just to see him happy and smile. And we all know Joe smiled probably a lot more than the average person would during this whole journey. So that was really nice. And then the following week, my mom came up and we took him out again. My mom wanted to take him for a brunch, lunch, whatever, for his birthday. So we took him out again. Same thing, manpower with the wheelchair. Took him out, had a great time, came back. It was, those were the only times that we really pretty much took him out because the mobility was getting worse. Because again, the edema was so bad from when he fell that he fell a couple more times and it just progressively got worse. So it was very hard. I mean, we had a little physical therapy time from a friend of ours, and we're thankful for that. Because on hospice, that's going to be a whole nother segment, the hospice. They don't cover physical therapy and all that, but again, another segment. So, it was harder. Plus, snow, weather, cold weather. Couldn't even get him out to the porch. It was too cold, So those are things I wish were a little different. But, that old saying, it is what it is, which I hate saying that anyway. But we did our best. We'd have our little dance parties. We had people visiting. And he got to see a lot of people. A handful, unfortunately, he didn't get to see. But it's okay. He knew, he listened to all the voicemails that people were leaving for him. I made sure to read every single message, play every single voice message. He knew how much he was loved. Believe me when I tell you. And he loved just as much, maybe even harder back. So that's the beginning of the hospice journey. And we danced, we sang, we cried, we laughed, we watched TV, we said things we wanted to say to each other, which is good. Because you always want to have that, say things. And to be honest with you, I don't have any regrets. I do wish things were a little different, but for me personally, I don't have any regrets because I know that I did pretty much the best that I possibly can, physically, mentally. He knows it. It was hard to watch. I can't imagine anybody saying that that was easy, honestly. Even if you are 6'5" and 300 pounds and like a weightlifter, I can't even see them saying it was easy. Maybe it was easier on a physical perspective, but mentally, it's not. Emotionally, it's not. If you're human, you're not going to say that. I'm sorry, you're just not. So let's fast forward a little bit. So again, for the first 4 or 5 weeks, dancing, singing, and he continued to. But I referenced the 4 or 5 weeks because into like the 6th week, no, maybe a little bit before that, is when he started to see people. And I know a lot of you hear about this stuff, right? You probably experienced it yourself or saw other people experience it. And he'd be, we had when we finally got the bed, we had it in the middle of the living room. And for some reason, it was always, he was positioned this way, but whoever he saw was always to the right side. Never to the left, never straight ahead. It was always to the right. So we could be singing, dancing, watching movies, whatever. And then out of nowhere, he would start mumbling and go into this little trance and point and stare. And it wasn't only done with me. Other people saw it too. So it was just done out of nowhere. And he would mumble. You really couldn't understand what he was saying, but clearly we knew that he was talking to somebody only because he was pointing. Because if he wasn't pointing, I would think, well, maybe it's a seizure, because he was having little seizures in between, whatever. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. So that happened for quite some time, almost every day, sometimes a couple of times a day. Like I said, out of the clear blue, it would just happen, boom, and mumble. And one time, he did start to talk about it. In the beginning, he didn't want to talk about it. I don't know at first if he remembered, but I think he did, but he just didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to address it. And one time he said that it was his mother, his biological mother. Joe was adopted. He had 2 moms, and he did have a relationship with his biological mom since I believe he was in his early 30s. But that was his biological mom. He never identified anyone else except my grandmother, that he never met, by the way. And that was a couple weeks later. And I remember that particular day he was very antsy. Now, being antsy and irritated and all that is part of the hospice journey too. Never mind the fact he had brain damage, he had brain tumors, he was on Keppra, which is a pretty hefty anti-seizure drug that affects demeanor, and the infamous steroids. He was on 12 milligrams of Dex a day. That's a high dose. So he was getting very irritated that day. He wanted to get out of bed, My cousin was here. And I was like getting frustrated. I was like, what if he falls out of bed? Then we call EMS, have to pick him up. But then it causes more damage. Like, a whole bunch of things are going through your head. And again, it wasn't easy. Yeah, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get, all that. So as he's going through his irritated state, all of a sudden he looked again to the right. Remember, always to the right, always to the right. He's pointing, but this time he's not mumbling. Well, he kind of is mumbling, but not he's like kind of yelling, like arguing with or mad. But remember his state of mind before that. So, you don't say anything when these things happen. And after he kind of came out of it, I asked him, I said, well, who was that? And for some reason, he wasn't able to talk in a full sentence. So all he said to me was, your mom. Your mom. Now, mind you, my mom is still here. So I didn't quite understand where he was going with that. He stopped after that. So I was like, I let it go. My cousin left. And we were just watching shows, TV, whatever. And about 45 minutes later, oh, no. Let me back up. he did say after that there was an old woman in a bright light with dark wavy hair. So I'm saying, okay, maybe one of your grandparents. Remember, again, he was adopted. So in actuality, he would have 3 sets of grandparents. His adopted, well, 4. His adopted parents and then his biological parents. So, or who knows, a great aunt he didn't know. I mean, you never know in the spirit world. It's interesting to say the least. So, 45 minutes later, out of the clear blue, we're watching TV, and he just comes out and says, descendant of Josie. Descendant of Josie. So I'm like, what? He said it again. So I'm like, do you know who Josie is? And he says, no. I said, do you know who the descendant of Josie is? And he said, no. And I said, it's me. He went like that. And I said, yeah, Josie's my grandmother. Now, my grandmother passed over 20 years ago. Yeah. So I showed him a picture of Josie, my grandmother, back in the day when she was younger and she had her dark hair, wavy hair, short, dark, wavy hair. And he went like this. Now, he never saw a picture of her. He didn't know her name. Nothing. So it's very interesting to me that she came down to see him and, you know, she was looking over him. So it made me happy. He also said that she said he wasn't ready. Even though there was a light, but I think that's why he got mad. Because he was, no, you see that light, you know what that means, right? And I guarantee you talk to 98% of the people who have witnessed this, other people going through this on hospice, they'll tell you the same type of stories with the lights and seeing people and all this stuff. And I've always believed in that. I know some people don't, but I'm going to tell you something right now. You will. You will. You may not see it with somebody else, but when it's your time, you're going to experience it because it happens all the time. Because, and you know what? Be happy about that because that's a good thing. We know that we're going to see our loved ones again. They come to get us. They're here. They're surrounding us. They're always protecting us. We just may not know it. We know it. We see signs here and there, of course. But when it's our time, they're going to make their presence very known, very known. And that's what gives them comfort and peace. And I can tell that he started not to be afraid because let's face it, majority of us are afraid. Joe, the one that wanted to live. I never saw somebody in my whole life that wanted to live as much as he did. That's what broke my heart even more so. Because he really wanted to live. And, but being afraid, and he used to say it. He used to say, you know, I'm afraid. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Another heartbreaking thing. Who does? Let's face it. But I saw how he started to become more accepting, if you will, but less afraid. And that's their job. They come here to comfort you, to bring you home. We started from someplace. We're going back home. That's home. This is not home. Anyway, so that was pretty interesting, and it made me happy to know that she's okay, first of all, and that she was watching over us. I include me in that too, only because she was my grandmother, but yeah, she was watching over Joe. And you know, I felt a lot of presence, like the whole time he was home. And even before that, like way before, Joe always felt presence here. I never did. He always did. So I knew it wasn't bad, because, you know, you would always sense, I think for the most part, you would sense something bad, but it was always good presence. So knowing that people were always here to protect us is good. So that's this segment as far as seeing our loved ones and stuff we did while he was home on hospice. Again, singing, dancing. I know you guys saw some of the videos, which is funny because, I don't know, he got on like a Frank Sinatra kick. He always liked Frank Sinatra, but all of a sudden he got on this Frank Sinatra kick. And I remember one morning, it was like 5:30 in the morning, and I hear him belting New York, New York, singing real loud. And I thought at first I was dreaming. And then, no, he was in the living room singing all loud, smiling, dancing. I was like, and the cat's meowing because he wants to eat. And there was like a duet going on in here. But he just, like, the music got him going. But Joe is he was all about music. So my suggestion to anybody, whether they really like music or not, music soothes the soul. Music got him going. When you have somebody that's pretty much bedridden at that point, that's dancing and singing, and he was. His legs would go, his hands, and waving in the air, and you just enjoy the time that you have left on this earth, no matter how you do it. But Joe always managed to enjoy anything, including his being home on hospice. So it wasn't the worst experience, but again, I can't see anybody saying, oh yeah, hospice was great, unless they're talking about how the care was or whatever. But nobody wants to know that your loved one's dying. Let's face it. But I have a lot of segments. I have a lot to cover. Again, I'm still getting used to this video stuff, so it's not going to matter what I look like. I don't even care. You hear the church bells in the back? Anyway, a lot of segments to cover, a lot of things to do still, making those changes to the system. Each segment is going to be, specific to a certain subject. A lot of you have seen my documentation, my journals rather, of experiences and things that have to change, because let's face it, every single one of us is going to die at one point or another. It's just life. There's nothing we could do to stop it. And my thing is, the end of life is just as important as the beginning of life. How people celebrate a birth, as we should, right? We celebrate the end just as much. Comfort, respect. There's so many factors to this. And we have to make sure that each and every one of us get that dignity. Dignity, oof, big. They need their dignity. It's hard for them. It's hard. Can you imagine being on the other side and having somebody take care of you and you can't do anything? You can't do anything. Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow. So dignity is very important. We have to give them their dignity, respect, honor, everything. So with that all said, guys, I have a lot to cover, so stay tuned. We'll talk soon.